morning to you. I love the fact so many of you getting in touch on a whole host of different issues. I've picked some hosepipe ban ones. Mohammed, morning Mohammed. Isn't this just typical? I emailed my water company, SES, to find out if there is a hosepipe ban in Sutton, which is in Surrey. An automatic reply said it would 10 days for me to get a response. How ridiculous, I still do not know. Yeah, I don't think SES is, but don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on that. But I know it's 10 days for a reply. Ridiculous, isn't it?
Not good, is it? Mark in Surrey says water companies ping a hosepipe ban when they see fit, but don't ever reduce the bills where we can't use the water that we have all paid for. And yet they are hopeless at fixing leaks and issues in the water system. And I think that's what it is for a lot of people. It's the hypocrisy of it all. And, you know, you're paying very good money for your water bills and then you can't use it.
Breakfast, I remember the hosepipe bans in the 80s. Very surprised they haven't invested and prepared for this, and it's happened again. Pamela says the water companies want to fine people £1,000 for breaking the hosepipe ban. What fine is put on the water companies for leaks and the failure to stop the leaks? I mean, look, Ofwat probably have some sort of fine system in place, but if it probably, I don't know for sure, again, don't quote me on it, but if they do, it's not making enough of a difference if we're losing 1.4 billion litres of water a day across the whole country. Crackers.
And we do want to know, would you grass up a neighbour if you are living in Hampshire or the Isle of Wight and you're under this hosepipe ban? Now, if you were seeing your neighbours watering their garden in the middle of the night, would you let Southern Water know? They could be fined up to £1,000. Very interested in that. GBNEWS at gbnews.uk. We haven't had any of those so far. I think everyone's a lovely neighbour.
Yeah, everyone's a lovely neighbour. Just a quick one from Trevor. He says, I'm just going to put 4 watering cans out in the garden and keep filling them with our hosepipe. I would imagine that will be allowed. Ooh, I don't know, Trevor. I don't know.
Rebellious emails.
If you filled them from the kitchen tap, you might get away with it. I don't know.
Yeah.
You probably end up having to go to court or something over that one and arguing it out. I just don't know.
Well, do let us know. We do like to hear from you. Mandy's been on touch on Twitter, because you can also get in touch on Twitter at GBNews. She says, another brilliant breakfast show. Stephen, it was bang on the money, talking about Tom Harwood earlier. Ellie's a breath of fresh air. That's very nice, thank you. Only thing that would have made the show better if you had Liz Kershaw doing the papers, Mandy. Well, I can tell you we have got 2 people doing the papers. They're doing a fantastic job this morning. Where's my list?
It's Joanna Williams and James Bloodworth.
I'll share your one. Sorry, I
can only apologise for Miss Costello this morning.
I'm only reading what Mandy said. But no, you two are doing a fantastic job, and I'm sure lots of people will be in touch saying that as well. Dig myself out of this hole. Joanna, should we start with you?
I can't believe she did that. Anyway, I think you're fabulous, Joanna. Let's have a look at the Mail. It's a really important story, actually, because it's what they call a chemical kosh.
Yeah, it's a very sad story, and as you said, a very, very serious story. This is about people, residents in care homes, particularly people with dementia, who had their medication essentially increased massively over the course of lockdown, when visitors weren't allowed in care homes. And it just seems like, you know, we're having more of the horrible consequences of lockdown coming to light, and people in care homes seem to be suffering most of all. I mean, right the way through, from being discharged out of hospitals right at the beginning without being properly tested, the virus being spread in care homes. And now we hear that during that time there was a big increase in the number of people being prescribed antipsychotic medication, people with dementia. And the side effects of this are very serious. It's an increase in stroke, decline in the condition of the dementia that they're suffering from originally, and can also ultimately lead to a premature death. And you know, this is a really serious thing.
The trouble is, it's one of those issues where you need to dig deep, actually, isn't it? And there may be an argument to say that perhaps this needed to be done because people were getting very anxious, very stressed because they weren't seeing relatives and things. So the one presumes there's got to have been a good medical reason for doing it, But even so, it's still disturbing.
Well, we'd hope so, and I suspect what you're saying there, Stephen, is absolutely right. You know, that people were in a very heightened and distressed state because of the changes in their circumstances. But then I think it's important that we ask, was that change, was it absolutely necessary? Is there any way that could have been mitigated? I mean, clearly, I'm not going to pretend that the spread of COVID in care homes wasn't a very serious matter that absolutely needed to be taken seriously, and measures clearly did need to be put in place. But I do just wonder if there was any way that it could have been for a shorter period of time, or, you know, more. Eventually we let people meet relatives outside, didn't we? And there were various things like that, whether things like that could have perhaps be done sooner. I guess the important thing for me is obviously we can't rewind time and change things that have already happened, but can we make sure that we're learning the right lessons in case, heaven forbid, we're ever in this situation again?
Isn't it so interesting how we are still unpicking the impact of those lockdowns, the best part of 2 years, seeing the impact on the economy. Now we're hearing about, you know, how it's affected our elderly residents in care homes. And James, that your next story kind of relates to the lockdowns and coronavirus, long COVID, more common in the unemployed. This is a story in the Times.
Yeah, so it's in the kind of economically inactive, there's a higher prevalence of long COVID. And I mean, in one way, this seems sort of inevitable in that the long-term unemployed, it tends to be health issues they have already, and people with long-term health issues are more susceptible to the lingering effects of COVID after you've had the virus. That said, I mean, I've had COVID myself twice, and both times I had it afterwards, I had these night sweats which went on for about 3 months, and that's considered a form of long COVID. So it is quite common, but it tends to hit people who are already unhealthy more. And one of the reasons Britain had there was such a big impact of COVID here is because life expectancy in Britain is already the worst among the worst in Europe. And there's obesity, hypertension, chronic respiratory conditions, and excess alcohol use are quite widespread in Britain compared to other European countries. We are quite an unhealthy nation, and that means there will be more of a long-term impact from long COVID as well, it seems, unfortunately.
Part of the problem is with this, though, is what is long COVID?
Yeah.
I mean, the minute anyone, and I'm not being unsympathetic, but the minute anyone sort of had COVID and then they feel fatigued for a number of weeks, it's long COVID. It's long.
Yeah.
COVID. I don't know if that's clinically correct or not.
No, I think so. So the fact I had these like night sweats, it doesn't affect my day-to-day life really. It's an inconvenience. That would actually be classed as long COVID. But then you have other people who have more debilitating conditions where they can't get, they're bedridden essentially.
Yeah.
Which I would say, yeah, that's
long COVID. Yeah.
Such a broad umbrella, isn't it?
It is. Oh dear. In the mirror, Joanna. Prince Harry, I've reached a point when it comes to talking about Prince Harry's stories, I'd almost just sort of like to go, no more.
No, I would.
Because I don't like seeing a family disintegrate. I really don't like it. But I also just wish they'd stop.
No.
Stop, take a step back, disappear for 12 months. Let me calm down.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, this is the second lawsuit Harry is bringing over this issue of his security and in the UK, and whether he should be given police protection or not, and whether he offered to pay for it or not, and whether that was the right thing to do. I mean, just a couple of things that stand out to me about this story. I mean, one is just the sheer cost. I mean, all morning we've been talking about the cost of living crisis, spiralling inflation, etc. I mean, these legal actions that he's bringing are £100,000 at least a pop, and the people who I guess are rubbing their hands in glee over this are the lawyers who are raking in the money, and they're not going to be telling him, look, just stop, Harry. They're going to be, please carry on. And you wonder where all the money is coming from to fund these lawsuits. But also, it wears you down, it absolutely grinds you down, and it just seems almost as if it is kind of just constantly keeping his name in the papers. And the other thing we know is when he went over to the US, it was supposed to be about privacy, and you think just.
But I think that's what so many people find so hypocritical and so confusing, really, about the situation. He stepped down as a senior royal. He wants privacy. He doesn't live here anymore. He lives in Santa Barbara, I believe. But you still want police protection. You still want all those rights when you decide to come home.
Absolutely, and his big contention here seems to be over the fact that he offered to pay for it. But I think he forgets that for kind of normal people, as mere mortals, the police is not a private security service that you can flash your money around and kind of click your fingers and have come and act on your behalf. No matter how rich you are, you can't employ the police in your capacity as a private citizen, which is what Harry now is.
Yeah. Oh, just stop it, Harry. Stop it. Also in the Mirror, there's going to be a strike of Amazon workers, which actually, see, this is interesting though, isn't it, James? In that this could affect us much more than, say, the rail strikes or even the postal strikes.
Yeah, and it's funny when we're talking about what I would call the entitlement of Prince Harry, who wants taxpayer-funded protection when he comes to the UK. And then you've got Amazon workers, who I would say are much more important to most of our lives and the economy in this country, who have been given a 35p, a derisory, I would say, 35p pay rise and a plan to strike. I mean, Amazon is the biggest multinational company in the world. It's headed by the richest man in the world. And, you know, I've been undercover at an Amazon warehouse in 2016, and I saw a situation where workers were they were given disciplinaries if they spent too long in the toilet. You were given disciplinaries for taking sick days. And 35p, it seems more insulting than not receiving any pay.
35p a what? An hour?
An hour, yeah.
An hour.
That seems more insulting than just not giving anyone a pay rise at all when inflation's so high at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you're working in Amazon warehouse or anything for Amazon, get in touch, gbnews@gbnews.uk, and keep it confidential. I mean, I don't know, because we all rely on Amazon. We frankly rely on Amazon now.
Yes.
I mean, that's the strong position they're in. Just very briefly, just in 30 seconds, Joanna, staycations, no more.
We all want to go abroad. It's called, pent-up demand. People have been forced to have staycations for the past couple of years because of COVID and lockdown, and now we want to make up for lost time with 2 weeks abroad.
Yeah,
don't blame you. We need the guaranteed weather, don't we? We need the sunshine.
You do.
It's also cheaper to go abroad than to stay at home.
Very
yeah,
cheap.
it can be.
Yeah.
Joanna, James, it's been a joy. Thank you very much indeed. Good to see you.